5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host, Kelcey. And Kelcey, they call it March Madness, but it's been a lot more mad than we're used to so far. In just the last 48 hours, things have been going real wild.
Yeah, it's been wild, crazy, bonkers. Light your hair on fire, ladies and gentlemen. It is just getting started, too, because I don't know about you. I have my fire extinguisher. Well, I'm not going to pull it out right now, but it's right here next to me, ready for the rest of this month, because, I mean, we're already only, 10 days in, 9 days in right now, and this has been one of the most insane, not just pre-NFL free agency, pre-March Madness, but also NFL Combine performances we've seen so far.
It's been absolutely wild as well, too. So, you know what? We're not going to waste any time as well, too. We're going to get right started into the perfectly named tip-off segment that we like to start the show off, presented by Dr. Squash. Smell like a man, feel like a champion. Click the link in our bio. Get all the wonderful soaps and scents for you or the lucky person in your life as well, too, to be smelling good. So, you know what it's called?
They just released the Batman, the Batman Enigma now. So the Batman and the Riddler. We had the Star Wars special edition. Now we have the Batman special edition. So special edition soaps. Definitely go check those out. I know I will be purchasing my own Batman Enigma as well.
You mean you already have it on reserve as well, too. And don't forget they had Halo as well. So they got a little bit of something for everybody as well, too. They're out there cooking for everybody as well. So we're going to the tip-off. The tip-off properly named because we're talking basketball. Not NBA basketball, but March Madness right on the horizon as well, too. We got some of the teams fighting for their conference championships. And Kelcey, looking at the top 10 poll, there's not a whole lot of a variety right there as well, too. Like the top 8 in both the coaches and the AP poll are virtually identical.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's unlike earlier this season where we had like Auburn ranked 1 and Gonzaga was ranked 1 in the other. It's been pretty similar since Auburn got knocked down and they went on a losing streak. So everything else has pretty much stayed the same. I think the biggest difference is kind of where people rank Duke at, where they rank Kansas at, is really seeming to be the difference. But even then, it's like, are they ranked 5? Are they ranked 6? It's not like, are they ranked 2? Are they ranked 3 anymore? The top 4 seem to be pretty steady right now.
Definitely seems like that as well, too, for those of you who haven't seen. Right as of right now, at the time of this recording, the top 10 for both has Gonzaga, Arizona, Baylor, Auburn for the top 4, then Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, and Villanova through 8. Then 9 through 11, it gets goofy. For example, the top 25 has Tennessee and Purdue tied at 9 with Providence at 11, where the coaches have Purdue at 9, Providence at 10, and Tennessee at 11 as well, too. So depending on how these conference championships play, we could definitely have a little bit of moving and shucking and driving, but I got to imagine those top 4 teams, barring some sort of ridiculous collapse or explosion, we're going to see those top 4 teams will probably be the number 1 seeds when we head into March Madness.
Oh, very likely. Yeah, it's very interesting to look at this, though, because look at the top 4. Baylor has like opponents with Auburn, has a worse record than Auburn, and they've lost to the opponents Auburn swept. So it's a very interesting aspect to look at, like, a team who has a more losses than the other, but because they play in a better basketball conference, gets that higher ranking. And we'll be completely fair. Auburn deserves their top 4 ranking. They don't deserve anything higher than 4, though, in my opinion. As an Auburn fan, it has been rough, to say the least. This last 2 weeks, you can't lose at the end of the season. It's been the big thing.
Absolutely as well, too. And what's interesting, you pointed all that out as well, too. Baylor actually has first place votes in both of them as well, too. Like in the AP, they have 3 first place votes and they have 2 in the coaches poll. And Auburn has 1 first place vote in the coaches poll, but none in the AP poll. So it's almost, what have you done for me lately? And I guess Auburn went on their streak at just the wrong time as well, too. But it does look like, barring, I can't even imagine the situation, but Gonzaga is probably going to be the number 1 seed, overall seed yet again. Not undefeated this time as well, too. So maybe a little bit of pressure off of their backs after what they had to go through last season as well, too. One thing that is interesting to me, it's not the number 1 seeds, but looking down in that 9-ish area, Purdue's an interesting team for me when I look at them. Because a lot of people, you would talk to them, they either absolutely loved Purdue, they were all in on the Boilermakers, that engine choo-choo is choo-chooing its way straight to the championship, or they're overrated, they're trash, they're going to be a 3 seed that gets knocked out in the first round. Like, there is no in between with them. Yeah. Right now, they're the highest ranked team in the Big Ten as well, too. Granted, weirdly enough, they're not at the top of the Big Ten standings because of their in-conference record. They're actually sitting at 3rd, but the highest ranked team overall, kind of goofy how that is. They've only lost in the Big Ten, have not lost out of conference, but I feel like they will either be a number 2 seed and get destroyed, or they'll somehow end up in a number 3 and maybe even make a run to the Final Four as well. Like, they seem to be the enigma team out of the top 10 when I look at them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like a lot of their their ranking is going to be based on how they perform in the Big Ten championship game, or in the Big Ten tournament period. If they get bounced early, which they have the complete possibility to, well, I say early for them, which is still round 3 of the Big Ten tournament. But like, if they get bounced there, that's not going to look good for Purdue. They might drop to a 5 seed, really, if where they're at right now. Right now, they're set up to be a 3 seed, but they could easily drop in that Big Ten. Like you said, their only losses have come in the Big Ten, but that's not good when you're talking about, rankings when the conference championships are coming up, when the conference tournament's coming up, because you look at the top right there, 4 and 5 right now, Auburn, Kentucky. Right now they're scheduled to meet each other in the championship game if all plays out. And that could decide who that 1 seed's going to be there from the SEC. Then you have Tennessee that can possibly make an upset in that. But like in the Big Ten, you have Purdue, and then it's a good drop before you have your next Big Ten team. But the problem is, an automatic bid gives you so much extra weight in rankings sometimes that, like, if a team who is a 12th ranked team right now, or let's say the next Big Ten team right there is Wisconsin at 12. Let's say they take the tournament and they take it overwhelmingly strong, like they wipe the floor with everybody on the way to the championship. You're looking at potentially them sneaking into that 3 seed and Purdue, like I said, dropping to a 5, and well, who knows from there? I mean, this is conference tournament time is fun, but it's like also one of those weird things, like how much weight does each conference give to their tournament? And like the SEC, this one plays a little bit of a part. The Big Ten always is a strong tournament. The Big East is always a strong tournament. The ACC, a very fun tournament always. That one's always entertaining. But like the Pac-12 tournament, not as weighty as some of the other ones.
Not at all. Looking at the Big Ten too. Last year, the Big Ten was all of these Goliaths. There was like 9 deep that at one point were in the top 10 at one point too. They all got bounced relatively early for the most part as well too, because they beat the heck out of each other so much throughout the year. Right now, it feels like it's Purdue, then there's the Illini and Wisconsin not too far behind. I mean, like Ohio State and Iowa are kind of on the outside looking in, but could still depend on how their Big Ten goes. But it's not the same Big Ten as it was last year, but it's still, as you mentioned, an incredibly tough tournament. For Purdue to get a ranking that they want, they're going to have to at least get to the conference championship, in my opinion. Maybe they lose it and you can still get a little bit of leeway, but if they get bounced in one of the first, second, if they don't get to the championship, they're in danger as well, too. You can see another team squeak by. The SEC you mentioned to a T as well, too. It feels like it's clearly Auburn and Kentucky. You mentioned Tennessee and not far behind as well, too. My thought is if Tennessee wins the whole thing, say they beat Kentucky and Auburn on the way there as well, too, could that propel Tennessee into maybe a number 1 seed or maybe just on the outside looking in as a high number 2? That is an interesting thought as well.
With how weird this season has been, I would not be surprised in the least. But with that said, I mean, you're looking at they'd have to hop, 6 teams to get into the top 5? I mean, since then they're tied at 9 in the AP, it's 5-6 teams, I mean, give or take. The Big East, I don't think you really have to worry about it if you're Villanova. I mean, but then again, you talk about a tournament that surprises people. That's always the Big East. Mm-hmm. The ACC, I feel like you're safe with Duke right now. Kansas, I feel like you're safe with Big 12. And I feel like Duke's safe only for no other reason than his Coach K's last season. Like, there's no way Coach K does not win his last ACC tournament.
Yeah, he did lose his last ever regular season game as well, too, which was kind of disappointing. And the rankings show is in the coaches poll, they dropped 5 spots and dropped 3 in the AP, which I'm not surprised they dropped. I was surprised that all the ranks were like, nope. Usually you'd see Duke's one that's hard to move them unless they have like an epic collapse or a huge loss, if that makes sense. I'm surprised that they move so many spots. They're like one of those, almost like how Alabama is in football. If they lose one close game to a good team, they'll only drop like 1 spot. They'll still somehow be in the playoff until you cut the head and the back of the snake off. For Duke, they actually made them take a dip and put them in a position to maybe end up being a 3 seed, depending on how the ACC tournament plays out or how others perform as well. So that is very interesting looking at as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But, now I got to go away from some of these power conferences right now, and we got to talk about something that has never happened in the history of the NCAA, and that's Bellarmine. If you guys don't know who Bellarmine is, they are the team that never dribbles on offense. That's their claim to fame. If you guys don't believe me, it is literally an article written about them by SI. I mean, their offense is so fluid. It's all passing. It's all motion offense. Nobody stands still on their offense unless they're up by 12, which I learned last night. That was the only time somebody stood still. And let me tell you, he got reamed by the coach when he stood still. So it does happen, but it's an instant benching. But this team, in their second season of D1 basketball, wins the ASUN Conference. Automatic bid conference. You win your tournament, you're in. They win their tournament, they don't get to go. And if anybody's wondering why, the ruling is you're 4 years. You have 4-year period, basically a probation period from the time you transfer up from D2 to D1 that you cannot compete in postseason tournaments. And DJ, I want to ask you this question. Should a team who is moving up be penalized with lack of postseason play?
I'm gonna put this in the most politically correct way I can. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. At no point during their incoherent rambling when they made that rule were they close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. I award them no points, and may God have mercy on their soul. How did you come up with this? You move up, and you are automatically on probation for 4 seasons. If you move down, I could see maybe a season or 2 just to kind of get the recruit acclimated, that thing as well, too, to get the Division I, like the athlete transition, if that makes sense. You're going up and being penalized for it as well, too. Maybe 1 season, if even that, when you go up. But even that, I think, is kind of a little bit weird. It's because you were so dominant, or you're starting to get like that influx of D1 athletes as well, too, to get to that point. So I just think this is absolutely asinine, and it takes away from these heroics. This tagline that, for those who watch the stream, is perfect. Heroics thwarted. You're taking away everything they work for, and the losing team is the one that gets to celebrate at the end, really. I mean, I know they stormed the court. It's like Bellarmine is the victor, but the one who walks away, like they won the battle, but second place wins the war. It's absolutely it's insane to me.
So the team that actually gets to go from the ASUN is the regular season champion. So Jacksonville State, not Jacksonville, who they played in the tournament. This is the whole funny part about Jacksonville University, who they played in the championship, beat Jacksonville State to get to the tournament championship against Bellarmine. So they beat their in-city rival to lose to Bellarmine, and then watch their in-city rival, who they just beat in the tournament, then go to the tournament. So this is it gets even crazier, where the team who did the work to get to the championship, knowing the rules, still doesn't get to go, even though the team that they got beaten by is ineligible. They have to watch then their rivals, who all they did was win the regular season. And let's be completely honest, regular season basketball, it's kind of wishy-washy whether it's competition level. Postseason basketball is top competition at all times.
I'm literally trying to think of any other comparison, like how you can make this across sports. Like maybe you get to the Super Bowl, one team has an outrageous like steroid thing afterwards, but because they won the Super Bowl like 50-5, you can't make the runner-up the Super Bowl champ, so you just randomly award it to like the random third place seed or something like that. That gave them a good fight. This feels like a participation trophy that comes with a winner's purse.
Here's the best comparison I have. 2 teams let's say a 7 seed makes the Super Bowl against a 1 seed. Then that 7 seed team has a COVID outbreak the week of the Super Bowl due to none of their fault, but it happens during media day. So they then have to replace that team. Well, they don't replace them with the championship loser. They don't replace them with the divisional loser they beat. They replace them with the number 1 overall seed from that conference going into that game. That's really what it is. Like the regular season number one in the conference is who they replace in that Super Bowl. That would be what they would do. Like this is the dumbest rule I've ever heard from a lot of cases. Like it's not a competitive evening out. That you're coming from D2 with D2 recruits. The guy who was the leading scorer has been at that school for 5 years, and his best game was this championship game where he scores 27 points. That's his best ever performance in the championship game, leading his team to their first ever conference title in the ASUN. But he gets thrown aside because he spent 3 out of his 5 years in D2. But they have that postseason ban. The postseason ban is the dumbest thing I've ever seen for teams moving up. I really like this whole thing. When they said that out loud, I instantly lost so much interest in the game at that point in time, because it was just so disappointing.
You should be rewarded for going up, not punished as well too. And it's absolutely blasphemous to me. Before we jump into our next segment, I do want to point out one thing that I just looked at the standings today, and it kind of just had my heart sink a little bit. A prestigious program with a very unprestigious season. I'm looking at Georgetown right now as well too. A team that a lot of people they're very, very familiar with as well too. I mean, you got Allen Iverson, Patrick Ewing. Like you can go back in just the lures of basketball history. 0-19 in conference this year, and only 6 of 24 overall. That one, I knew they weren't very good this year, but just seeing that actually in numbers just kind of made my heart sink a little bit as well too. From the era that when we watched Georgetown was a premier school, and they used to be basically the center U, if that makes sense as well too. Like they were for big guys, that's where you went. And now it just kind of hurts to see that as well too. That one just made my heart sink a little bit.
Well, not just center U. I mean, think about some of the great players we've seen out of Georgetown. You know, you look at AI coming out of there. You look at Patrick Ewing, who, by the way, coaching there and doing as poor as he's done. Now, interesting enough, though, last time they finished the season this poorly in conference, they did make the tournament by sweeping their conference tournament. I don't know if they can do it again this year. I don't think they can. But they did it before, and that was the pre-COVID season. So it's possible they could do it again. I highly doubt it, but it is completely possible that in all things that exist in basketball, you play the game for a reason. It's not one on paper, so I don't think it'll happen. But at the same time, it's worth mentioning that the last time it did happen, so we'll see.
If you're into sports betting, maybe drop $1 on that just to see if maybe some random things fall your way as well, too. And I want to go back to your analogy really quickly. You talked about how in the Super Bowl, it's like that 7th seed gets there, they get taken out, put in with the number 1 seed from the regular season. That might be the only way that we see Aaron Rodgers make a Super Bowl the way things have been going recently as well, too, which is going to take us into our next segment known as the main event, presented by Colorcast, the premier app for sports audio as far as talk shows, live casts, anything you want, you can find it on there. Definitely download it now. They got a new massive update coming up as well, too, so keep an eye out for that as well, too. And Kelcey, holy moly. The NFL offseason hasn't even started yet, and it's already going absolutely ballistic. As soon as the combine finishes, all the big parts and pieces start moving, and it seems like the NFL has been acting up here for the last 48 to 72 hours, and we're not even fully done yet.
Dude, this has been crazy. I've honestly, I've been tuned to my phone just because I've been watching just whatever the next move is, and I want to start with the one you just let in here with the spiciest of spicy takes here. Aaron Rodgers, with the mega deal of all mega deals for a man who is literally approaching 40 years old, and he will be 42 by the end of his contract.
Absolutely.
Signs a 4-year, $200 million, reportedly $135 million of it guaranteed. Reportedly, it was the updated number today that was released. Again, Aaron Rodgers came out to say, well, those numbers aren't right. Bullcrap, Aaron. Bullcrap. You know this is as close. This is the only way you were staying in Green Bay is if they gave you literally house and home. Like,
oh, they gave you the house, the home, the river, the state, and the key, and the cheese key to the city too.
I think he got part ownership of one of the lakes, if I'm not mistaken, as well at this point in time. Like, this is an insane deal, and first of all, Green Bay. I thought he was going to stay with Green Bay all season in the offseason. Let's just look. We both did. We both thought he was going to stay there in Green Bay. It would be very rare to see him leave. But I didn't think this was going to be the deal. I thought it was like maybe 1 year, $40 million. But what?
He's retiring. There's basically what they're saying as well too. Like unless he somehow pulls a 45, but I can't really see that necessarily happening. Playing until like he's 45, 46, something like that. But so basically, he's going to retire a Packer, which cool to see. I like it. I like seeing him finish out in the back end of his career as well too with the team that drafted him. He gets to stay full homegrown, and they're franchising Devontae Adams on top of it, so he gets to keep his one weapon that he likes to throw to a fault almost to a point. So it's good on the Packers. I mean, he's a back-to-back MVP, so it's not like they're signing him for what he's done, if that makes sense. They're signing him for what he still can blatantly do. You're not going to get much better than Aaron Rodgers at this point. Like, there's maybe 3 quarterbacks you'd take over him at this point, 3 to 5, if even that, when you factor in age. And for one season, there's maybe 2, if that, and I'm stretching for that. So it makes sense for Green Bay. It's great to see as well too. They got to figure out how to get over that postseason the hump they haven't been able to get over recently as well too. I made a little bit of a joke about coming into this one, but last year's loss, you can't only score 10 points when you have all the momentum like that. The year before, just sputtering as well too. They got to find a way to take that extra step. So I'm curious if the mega deal, how it's going to hurt them. So obviously Zadarius Smith's not coming back. There's no way in heck that's happening. There's not enough money for that. You're franchising Devontae Adams, so that's a rip of money there as well too. You just paid Aaron Jones last year. Like, where's this money coming from? How are you maneuvering this for the salary cap? Now, obviously the salary cap is kind of like the tooth fairy, and it's just a myth. But I'm curious how they're going to find a way to make this work.
Yeah, and I do have to go to our comments real fast. And somebody did ask on Belly Up TV right now, Russell to Denver, and we're going to get to that one in a minute. But then also RJ is dropping in. They won't be able to afford to win, and DJ, that's to your point. You're not able to bring anybody back. You're not able to really play out in free agency. Aaron Jones, if he's going to re-sign, is going to have to take a pay cut. A pay cut. Bakhtiari, if they're going to, what are they going to do with Bakhtiari? Because isn't he on a 1-year deal now?
I think he has a couple years, so I think they recently re-signed him, so I think he's still under contract. But I think they're going to have to pull the Saints and start doing some random restructures that make no sense, but somehow end up with $30 million.
Are we going to see a 4-year, $20 million non-guaranteed card? $100 million non-guaranteed contract yet again, or $80 million non-guaranteed, like we saw with Taysom Hill.
God,
Like,
I hope not.
this is ridiculous. Like, whatever legal gymnastics these guys are able to play to stay within the salary cap with these type of numbers is insane. I'm watching these type of deals and I'm like, oh, so they just got taken over by an oil sheik like they did in the EPL, like what they do in the Premier League with soccer. Like, those are the deals I see in soccer. Those aren't the deals I see in the NFL, where Aaron Rodgers is like, yeah, I'm almost 40. You know, I guess now's the time to set a record for most money in a year if he makes his total $50 million a year, even with Patty signing his life away for whatever that was. Like, dude, this is insane. I know Green Bay is a storied franchise, but it's time. Like, I feel like it was time to walk the dog with this one and just send him out to pasture. Like,
back-to-back MVPs. I mean, he can still cook a little bit. He's limited, and my concern he's been a little banged up recently as well too. Like last year's banged up, a couple years ago banged up. Like those injury concerns, that doesn't get easier to get up and move and run away from Danielle Hunter and squad as you get older. I mean, I hear at least an accordion of cracks every time I get out of bed. So I can only imagine what it's like for him at 40 as well too. So we're also going to talk about some other parts of this deal as well too. Is what does that mean with Jordan Love? We're going to get to that in a little bit, but we want to get to some of these other deals really quickly as well too. And you alluded to it. Let's go and jump on to the next one. Russell Wilson, the muscle Russell himself, is going to the Mile High Club and joining the Denver Broncos as well too, leaving Seattle after a decade of work and a Super Bowl championship. So what do you think, Kelcey? I'm gonna let you go to this one as well too, because you got some outspoken thoughts on Russell Wilson.
Of all the places I had Russell Wilson going to, this was the dead last on my list. And the reason why is because Sierra. I did not see Sierra as a Denver person, period. And that's nothing. It's because you look at it, she's a high-profile superstar in her own right. Why is she going to Denver? I'm sorry, this is no longer about Russell. This is purely about Sierra. Why is Sierra being relegated to going to Denver, of all places? Nothing against Denver. I love Denver as a person, but I'm also not worth $300 million.
It's like a lateral move from Seattle. It's not like going up in that. It's like going to a big California, New York, or something like that. Or a bigger Florida team. It's like a lateral move as far as like media availability type thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's technically considered a small market, which is not.
It's 15th out of like it's not
It's not a small market by any means, but it's, everybody and their mom is like, oh, Denver's this one. No, it's not. Okay, let's get that out of the way. But it's just very interesting to see, like, Denver. Wow. Like, that was my first thought when I saw this come across my screen, because I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, Russell, I couldn't believe Russell going. Secondly, I think Russell's still going to be a bottom 10 quarterback in the league, because you trade away Noah Fant,
who he wasn't going to throw to anyway.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. He's not throwing to him. But then you also cut Deshaun Hamilton, who I think was a fantastic receiver in his time there. 800 yards, double-digit touchdowns, gave you all he could before injury. The problem is everybody else on that team, receiver-wise, is injured. You have Jerry Jeudy, who injured this season off and on. You have your Kobe Hamilton, if he's even going to play, is not even there like half the time. Like, he plays one game a season. Tim Patrick is usually your number one because he's the only one that can stay healthy enough. And I'm sorry, I love Tim Patrick, but Tim Patrick's not a number one wide receiver in the NFL. And then what? You hope and pray Cortland Sutton can stay healthy for longer than 8 games? And that's still, you have 2 receivers at that point in time. You have a Melvin Gordon who still might leave in the offseason, in the free agent market. Like, I'm shocked this is where Russell went. I just cannot believe this is where Russell went of all the places. He could have gone so many other places and agreed to go there. Let's just be clear about it. Agreed to go there. He agreed to go to Denver today. That agreement did come. But he could have agreed to gone to so many other places that have actual weapons in place. And this one shocked me to my core.
When I was looking at this too, I agree with you with the receivers. Cortland Sutton is really nice. He's the number one when he's healthy and has a quarterback who could throw the ball. Jerry Jeudy, I just don't know. We have not really seen him do a whole lot. Part of it's injury, and part of it has been who's throwing him the ball, because they have not been able to get a passing game going. Tim Patrick, nice. KJ Hamler, when healthy, he's an absolute burner, and he's pretty nice. I like Noah Fant, but that doesn't matter for Russell. He's not a throw it over the middle guy anyway, so it doesn't matter. I like Javonte Williams, the young running back who's going to take over right now as well too. I like him. The defense has a lot of really good pieces, and it sounds like Von Miller might actually be coming back as well too. So Talk about a fleece of a deal for Denver. You get a bunch of you get Von Miller back, and all you have to get, and you get Russell Wilson for basically a 1 and a 3 because those second rounders were ones you got from the Rams anyway.
Let's not forget Shelby Harris.
Shelby Harris has like 6 sacks in a career season though. Like he's good. He's quality.
He was the top pass rusher on the team last year.
That was a bad pass rushing team last year. That's why.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, but like you still lost your best pass rusher.
But if you get Von Miller back, it balances it out as well too. So we might actually finally get to see Von Miller and Bradley Chubb healthy and playing together for the first time since they were drafted. So we'll see how that works out. They have good pieces. I think the biggest factor for him was that pass blocking offensive line was underratedly really good. They ranked 11th in pass blocking as well too. So not elite, but significantly better than what you're getting in Seattle. But my concern too is a lot of that was Russell's fault as well too. Is he is as outstanding as he is. He holds the ball and looks for deep shots downfield on 3rd and 7, as opposed to taking the 5-yard route as well, because he's a bombs away guy, and he's not quite like how the pig with the grease on, you have to try and chase and you can't catch it, like, or the chicken with the grease on from Rocky. He used to be able to be that in the backfield, no one could touch him. Now he's not quite as able to do that. He still has his absolutely fantastic moments. September Russell Wilson, I joked about on our 4th and 4 show, is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time when it comes to September Russell Wilson. If he can elongate that a little bit, I think Denver's clearly better with him. I just don't know how much better they are in that division when you have to deal with an ascending Chargers team with a young Herbert and I think their weapons are better across the board. Kansas City is still Kansas City. Even though they kind of took a poop last year in certain spots, they're still absolutely loaded. The Raiders are still weirdly right there in a way you can't really count them out as well, too, depending on what they do. So makes them better. You have to do something to compete in this division. I'm torn on it as well, too. I need to see it before I make a full judgment, which is easy to say as well, too. And you gave up Noah Fant. I don't like that. You gave up Drew Lock, who you didn't believe in anyway. He was pretty much gone no matter what. You gave up 2 1s and 2 2s and like a 3, it looks like as well, too, and swapped a 4. So a lot of those picks are ones you've got in the Von Miller trade, weirdly enough as it is. So yeah. I don't hate the move. It just it feels kind of interesting. I'm curious to see it. Maybe Russell's reborn behind this offensive line and we see him throwing slants and checkdowns again for the first time. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how it works. And I think the defense is going to be an upgrade because Seattle's defense the last couple of years has been kind of disappointing. Like they've not been up to par. The trade for Jamal Adams has not really panned out. He's a kamikaze, but at the same time, the ball hits him in the face. Bobby Wagner, who the Seattle also released shockingly on top of that as well too. It works, I guess. We'll have to wait and see. I'm curious to see how Russell blends in with that team as well, because I could see them somehow winning that division if everything clicks. But I can see them fighting to just not be the cellar dweller, like 8, 9, 7, and 10, something like that. If just depending on how things mesh. Russell's gonna have to. He's not gonna be able to bomb away DK or Tyler Lockett out there somewhere. That like Cortland Sutton and those guys are really good, but they're not quite like that.
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of this is like when I purely look at. First of all, let me go back to your point about the offensive line. Offensive line for Denver is a fantastic position right now. Quinn Miners is the future guard of the future for that team, and he belongs there and deservedly so. And I called that one, and I'm going to keep coming back to it because he is my poster boy for calling it in the NBA or the NFL draft. And anyways, Russell will love having him in front of him. The problem is going to be, can this offensive line, who's used to a 3 to 5 step drop to get rid of it, deal with a 7 to 9 step drop, pump, tap, pump, scramble around a little bit, throw the ball? Like, can you block for that long? And the answer is no. No offensive line can block for that long. Even the best Russell Wilson offensive lines couldn't block for that long. And, that's a big part of it. But then you also take away DK, who is a freak of nature, and there's no question about it, and then the mental acuity of Tyler Lockett, because I'm sorry, I have not seen a receiver and a quarterback have that type of connection on a deep option route time and time again and be successful for their entire careers. Even though they didn't throw the ball to Tyler Lockett last year, when they did it, it was successful. It's like, how is Russell going to look with those guys? And I go back to his transition to NC State and Wisconsin. I know it's college. I know it's a different Russell. He didn't have the weapons at either location. He has about the equivalent weapons that he does now in Denver. And his passing numbers were not great. His motion, his throwing ability, those were all outstanding. But his passing numbers were not great. And I worry that this move to Denver is going to be the similar thing where he just doesn't have the weapons to help him out. He's going to have the offensive line to help him out. But he doesn't have the weapons as far as receivers go right now to help him out. And because we haven't seen them. And maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe Jerry Jeudy comes out and shows us that he is that guy. But I've yet to see it from. I'm thinking Jerry Jeudy is that one Alabama receiver we kind of forget about every 4 years.
If Jerry Jeudy can be kind of the prospect he's expected to come out, he's arguably receiver 1 in that class coming out. If you get that from him and he's able to take that like third-year emergence with Cortland Sutton able to be healthy, then we might have something cooking in Mile High. Russell might be cooking something on that Mile High Club airplane as well. So we'll definitely have to see how that one goes. But
his deep ball's gonna love throwing it up in Denver though. By the way, he might travel 75 yards.
Exactly, and heck, you got KJ Hamler who runs a 4.29. He can run under some of those as well too. If he can get healthy. So definitely curious to see how that one plays out. And those should be some exciting AFC West matchups next year. Can't wait to see that. But moving on to the third big quarterback move so far, maybe not the last, and it's kind of the lesser of these three as well too. Carson Wentz is leaving Indianapolis after roughly 1 year and heading back to the NFC East to join the Commanders of Washington as well too. A couple of third-round picks, and they traded 2 third-round picks. One that could be a second if Carson plays a certain amount of snaps, and then they swapped second-round picks this year with the Colts. So I'm gonna start with you on this one as well too. What are your thoughts on seeing the Colts get out from underneath Carson and get the Washington Commanders to take his entire salary on top of it?
That's the part I love.
While keeping your first-round pick, which is at number 11 on top of that.
Yeah. So first of all, let's start with the Colts and the salary. Because the Colts already had a huge salary cap opening. They just freed up $78 million over the next 3 seasons to not have to pay anymore.
They're going to have $70 million entering free agency this year, which is by far the most.
Yeah, this is not fair. I'm sorry, but if anybody had hit free agency, that was like if A-Rod had hit free agency, I'm sorry, you take $50 million and you just go say, sir, sign here, and he's all right. Yeah, let's go. Like $50 million guaranteed. Here you go, and then you still have $20 million to play with and do your cap gymnastics at that point in time. Indianapolis is set up so well, despite their poor finish to last season, and Colts fans should be super excited to get out from underneath Carson. I have nothing against Carson. I think Carson was a very good prospect. I think he then just got something happened mentally, and you kind of like Sam Darnold, you start seeing ghosts. And especially after all the injuries, all the pain, and we saw it with Andrew Luck, you just cannot perform the same way you used to be able to. And you saw a lot of that last year with these weird picks that he threw that were just like, they were never throws. They were literally just like flicks. And yeah, and they ended up picks, or he always overthrows that one guy mid-range to seal the game. And those are passes he made in his career, but getting out from underneath that shadow is something that I think both Indy needed to do and Carson needed to do. I think Carson's now at that point in his career, and I hate to say it because he's had such a promising start to it. I think the injuries and everything are starting to take a toll, and he's going to kind of work his way into the background very soon. And it's sad to say that because he's a guy that I do think could have been good.
He's a more injury-prone and less elusive Russell Wilson. Everything we said about him, too. He struggles to take the check down. He's a big play quarterback, which in some offenses, that is great. I mean, that Eagles offense during those magical runs, he was really a good fit for. If he went to Tampa Bay, which is where I thought if he did leave some, that'd be a good fit for him, where you could just Mike Evans up there somewhere, Chris Godwin out there somewhere. Washington, Terry McLaurin might be out there somewhere. Curtis Samuel might be out there somewhere. So it might work there better, but with the way Indy was built with the running game, the offensive line, the less than spectacular weapons, more mid-range weapons. You can't miss those. You can't be as greedy. You have to be a check down Charlie with the occasional bomb here and there as well too. And he just couldn't quite get that as well too. He's never been that type of quarterback and has always struggled with that. I think down the stretch as well too is poor play. And we talk about 7 picks he threw the season, like 27-7. The numbers look good, but their best games of the season, their best wins, you beat the Bills. He threw for 100 yards and I had 1 touchdown pass to Jonathan Taylor. Against the Patriots, your second biggest win, he was 5 of 12 for less than 100 yards and a pick. He had that 1 sick throw against Arizona, and that when everybody was injured and Arizona's plummeting. And it's really about it. Like the rest of their big time wins, it's been mostly because Jonathan Taylor went absolutely ballistic or the defense went complete lockdown. His best games really were against competition, I guess, if that makes sense. Like they won regardless of him, I guess, as well. And I think that was when you needed him to win against down the stretch, he wasn't able to make those plays for him because he can't keep an offense on schedule very well. It's a hindrance to him. He can win you a game just when he's going bombs away and everything's clicking, but he can't keep you on schedule, and he will lose you some games, especially with those fumbles. I don't know how he fumbles so much. He has Goliath hands, and the ball always pops out. But I think Carson's going to do better with Washington than Indianapolis, honestly. He's the first quarterback in Commanders history, so I'm curious to see how he pulls that off as well, too. And he gets to play not only the Eagles twice now, he also gets to play the Colts next year. So either we'll see a Carson Wentz revenge tour or the we were right. And we'll see how that plays out as well, too. And before we jump into the next part of our NFL thing as well,
Well,
too.
I just want to go back to one thing you mentioned with Carson, and it's, he looked promising, he looked good, all that stuff. But in the Colts offense, let's be completely honest about it. They start it, end it with Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
It is RTDB every down if you can do it. If it keeps you ahead of the chains, and I'm sorry, but Carson is not a quarterback meant to just hand the ball off. He is, as you mentioned, he's a big play quarterback. His mentality is to not just hand the ball off or dunk it over. And just a simple, just a play, just a game manager is successful in Indianapolis to the point where they make the playoffs. It's Indianapolis is built to run the ball, and that was the biggest issue. It's kind of like what we relate back to Odell and Cleveland. When you look back at it, you're like, well, okay, yeah, we can see that wasn't a fit. It could have been, but that's just not in Carson's DNA. It could have been a fit for Odell in Cleveland, but that's not in Odell's DNA. They can't become those type of players because that's not who they were meant to be.
Exactly as well, too, which kind of leads into what I was going to mention next, too, is that leaves a giant hole in Indianapolis, the quarterback spot as well, too, right now. You don't have a first-round pick either, but the big name quarterbacks the offseason are kind of taken care of. So I'll go to you. What do you think, and what do you think the Colts are looking at as far as quarterback goes right now?
So either they pull some crazy gymnastics and get a first-round pick, which is not in their DNA whatsoever, because they love second-rounders, as they've proven with Quentin Nelson being, well, probably one of the most successful second-rounders out there.
Quentin Nelson was a first-rounder.
Sorry, Quentin Nelson, you're right.
You're thinking Darius Leonard, Braden Smith, and everybody else who's good. Jonathan Taylor, everybody else.
I choose the one first-rounder on the team. Him and T.Y. are the only ones that I chose. But yeah, so that just bothers me. Anyway, yeah, so they're not meant to pick in the first round. But if they do, well, then don't be surprised if they go get somebody I could honestly see them going Kenny Pickett, to be completely fair, just because he could throw it up there 50 yards, but he can also, as he proved in Pitt a lot, he could check it down. But I also wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if maybe they do go into free agency, maybe get a Mitchell Trubisky, but I still think he ends up a Giant. Maybe they get a Daniel Jones once Mitch Trubisky ends up a Giant, but I don't think that happens either. I really wouldn't be surprised if they go in the draft and look at if Desmond Ridder falls to that second-round pick now where they have Washington's pick at whatever, it's like 9th pick in the second round or 10th pick in the second round, something like that. Or if he doesn't fall, I look at somebody like Bailey Zappi or, I'm just going to stick with Bailey Zappi because I think he is a functional quarterback for that system and he can play well. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Sam Ellinger take a majority of the first snaps, but Bailey Zappi be that guy that kind of takes over down the road, and he could be a pick that you get in the 4th round. And you pick in a thin quarterback draft class, you get a 4th-round quarterback that all of a sudden leads your team to the playoffs and that can make the throws that you need to make the throws because he's done it at 2 stops along his university journey. So it's not just been one. And that's worth mentioning that Bailey Zappi could be the guy that kind of surprises some people that might get taken here for Indianapolis now that they have an opening at this quarterback spot.
Very interesting as well, too. I like the Desmond Ridder pick, especially if he does slip to the second round. I think if Kenny Pickett starts slipping in the first round, I think you'd see them finding a way to trade back into the back half of the first round, maybe, since you have the extra picks. There's Carson Strong, but they might be not wanting to even test any sort of Carsons right now as well, too. That's another quarterback who's out there on the board. Looking at free agency, Mark, you mentioned Trubisky as an option. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is out of the realm of possibility. You talked about a guy just manage the offense, check it down, use him as I don't want to say a placeholder because they've had a bunch of placeholders, but maybe he's a guy you could put in there before Sam Ellinger goes. Or maybe they kick the tires on Green Bay, like, what do you want for Jordan Love? Maybe they're just like, Jordan Love's got a rookie contract is going to be up before Aaron Rodgers' contract is up. Maybe you kick the tires on that and be like, want to take one of these 2s we just got or take a 3 or something like that? Maybe they pull him in and have him compete for the job as well, too. And then Jameis Winston is still sitting out there that not a lot of people have mentioned a lot. I know he's coming off the ACL, but the way ACL injuries are handling back, you might get him in by like week 3 or something like that. And he played pretty well with New Orleans. So I'm not saying that it's likely, but it's not outside the realm of possibility looking at it as well because his name has not been mentioned a whole lot out there.
I don't hate the Jameis thing. And look, as silly as some of the workouts that he posts on Instagram are, that's kind of what you get with Jameis. Honestly, let's be honest. They're not the weirdest workouts I've ever seen in my life, but they're actually somewhat, as weird as it is, they're somewhat functional when you consider he can't stand up on one leg. Like, it's as functional as you can get while not being able to stand up. So, I mean, I don't hate the Jameis pick at all. I think that's a good one.
And you'll get him for cheap because he's coming off the injury and stuff too, which means you have all that money. You can go maybe throw it at a couple of those other guys. Like there's some other guys we'll talk about in just 1 second about to hit free agency too. You could throw a lot of money at.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. I'm interested about your Jordan Love conversation because we did just talk about Jordan Love. What is his next step? Is he going to get moved? And I just kind of want to dive into this real fast before we go into who's going to be a free agent. Is Jordan Love going to be moved now? Or are they just going to bite the bullet and accept that he's their backup for the next 40 or like, well, I guess it's 2 years left on his contract.
Exactly. I mean, because you got him in 2020, so you've already ran through 2 years of him sitting on the bench. You do have the 5th-year option because he's a first-round pick. So you got 3 more years, and Aaron Rodgers is signed for 4. Like, at this point, I know they like to keep their quarterbacks around, kind of develop them. I think they had in mind. If Aaron Rodgers is leaving, this is a perfect scenario. But Aaron Rodgers kind of one-upped you in that regard, too, by re-signing and playing at an MVP caliber level the last 2 years. So I think it's kind of like when the Patriots grabbed Garoppolo just a little bit too early. They were trying to have the contingency plan really smart, but they just did it a little too early. At this point, you might as well cut bait with him and be like, all right, we don't have a lot of money to spend now. We got to draft these players. Maybe you toss him to Indy for one of those third-round, maybe a couple of those third-round picks or something like that, or a third and a fifth, or that third that could switch to a 2 if Jordan Love plays the whole season. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you could work something out at this point. There was word that Chris Ballard actually really liked Jordan Love too, so you never know there as well. So I don't hate that pick. Their exact words when their offseason is we are tired of the rotating carousel quarterback. We need somebody that can be like an actual long-term answer. He kind of fits for you right there. He's a young kid. You give him a couple years to develop. Who knows? You get a 5th-year option with him, and you don't have to pay him anything. And you've already re-signed all your key players, minus Quentin Nelson, like Darius Leonard. All of them have been re-signed. You still have a pile of money. I don't know. There is options there as well, too. I think the only other options are like Jimmy Garoppolo, but what do you have to give up for him, and is it really worth giving up at this point, too? So,
I mean, I guess you could trade him for money, do the old soccer trade, and just do a transfer for money. Like, I'm sure San Francisco would be okay with that.
If they'll allow that, yeah. Here's a washing machine with $10 million, and it's your salary cap.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting to look at, and there's not a lot of it feels like there's not a lot of viability at that quarterback spot outside of what's already gone. I mean, it's a lot of unknowns you're looking at with guys like it's a bunch of young guys. But now I do kind of want to go back to Jordan Love and the development in Green Bay. It's interesting because it was 5 years for Aaron Rodgers before he got 4 years before he got to start. Are we seeing similar with Jordan Love here? Like 4 years, they put the 5th-year, team option on him, and he's, in that team option season, he's when he finally starts. Like, could that be the case?
If I'm not mistaken as well, too, because Aaron Rodgers has 4 more years and Jordan Love has 3 more if you get that 30-year option. That's why I'm like, it doesn't quite line up. You'd have to cut Aaron Rodgers. Like, you'd have to cut bait with Aaron Rodgers.
I'm thinking we're assuming Aaron retires as a Packer. So what if he wins a champ or not even wins a championship? He hits 40 and then he's like, all right, I'm done. That leaves 2 years left on his contract. That's 1 year on Jordan Love.
Yeah, if he does that as well, too. The question is, does Aaron Rodgers stick around the whole 4 years? That is where it gets interesting as well, too. But I wouldn't be surprised if they look into moving him as well, too. It couldn't hurt at this point. Is trying to load up on what you can with young, cheap pieces in the draft to put around him because you can't sign anybody as well, too. But real quickly, we mentioned the free agents as well, too. A couple of big names expected to hit the market. Bobby Wagner just got released as well, too. It's the end of an era in Seattle on both sides of the ball. Trayvon Armstead, the left tackle from the Saints, a stalwart expected to hit. Amari Cooper from the Cowboys. Word is he's going to be traded or released as well, too. And amongst others, we saw the franchise tags go out for Chris Godwin, David Njoku, and a few others. Mike Williams re-signed with the Chargers. Looking at all these moves that are happening right now, what's one that kind of surprised you, and what's one of those guys that's expected at free agency that stands out to you?
I think the Amari being released and then the tagging of Dalton Schultz for Dallas. I think that one really confused me because you're overpaying for Dalton Schultz now with that franchise tag, and you're releasing Amari or trading Amari for what? And you're re-signing Noah Brown. You just freed up $20 million, and where are you going to do with that? If you pay Zeke, that's dumb. Like, you've seen the decline of Zeke. Running backs in the league, you've seen the decline of that. So if you pay Zeke when you have Tony Pollard, who's providing just as much production for a tenth of the price, why? Why are we doing this when you have Amari, who is, even when he's not getting the ball thrown to him, still a top 10 receiver in the league when, just give him a chance. I mean, if he's healthy, he's top 10 receiver in the league. He just gets open that way. It's maybe not statistically be top 10, but he just gets open like he's a top 10 receiver. And so that one shocks me. The only other one I'd look at is David Njoku, and for no other reason than I think he got screwed out of a big payday. I think he had a chance to get a big payday somewhere else, a la his teammate Austin Hooper when he left Atlanta. I think David Njoku was set to get a big payday as a tight end there. Instead, now they're paying him $11 million, I believe, something like that for the franchise tag.
That's definitely interesting as well, too. I think, luckily for him, though, it's a very tight end heavy offense, so maybe he'll put up numbers again and get a big deal next year as they can move off of that Austin Hooper deal as well, too, because that one is not quite panned out the way they'd hoped it as well. So maybe somehow that works out that way so he gets like too many big deals, and then Harrison Bryant gets into the mix as well, too. I mean, it's a tight end heavy offense, and maybe that works out. I agree with you. Amari's a big one. Like, if the Cowboys really do have to just release him at this point to save the cap space, because you can't do anything with Zeke's contract. Zeke's contract has you by the you-know-whats. Dak's contract has you by the you-know-whats. You're keeping Dalton Schultz and sacrificing Amari. There's a lot of teams that are going to be looking for his services. We mentioned the Colts with all their money. They should be like, here is a blank check, sir. Hopefully nothing over 20, something along those lines. There are plenty of other teams that would love his services. I look at Trayvon Armstead, a stalwart left tackle, getting a little older. Can only probably sign him to like a 3-year deal, but a guy who can, whatever team needs him, put him on the blind side, lock down. You're feeling real comfortable real quickly as well, too. And then Bobby Wagner as well, too. I mean, he's not quite Bobby Wagner of 3 years ago, but he's still a Pro Bowl linebacker, still one of the best in the game. Whoever takes him, you're still going to get an absolutely outstanding leader of your defense as well, too. And he's another one you could find just about any single team in the league. I have to imagine this release was kind of a, Bobby, we're about to be an absolute mess. So we're going to let you go out there and see if you can get another Super Bowl for you as well, too, because this is going to get real messy here. We might even send off Tyler Lockett here soon at this rate.
Yeah, look, Bobby's a guy I want to get on the podcast at some point in time. I'm still hoping we can get him on here, but I hope to goodness that is what it is. That Seattle's front office is like, look, we're not going to be good. Granted, I do think they have an opportunity to be good, but if they give Drew Lock an opportunity, because he has a lot of fun weapons out there, and now add Noah Fant to the mix. Anyways, I digress. What Bobby Wagner gives any team that he goes to, and maybe he does re-sign and just re-signs for a much cheaper deal with Seattle. That's a possibility in here as well. But whatever team he goes to, he does provide them the option of a guy who has improved his pass rushing ability, but he is still a great coverage linebacker. He is not top 5, well, I'd say top 3 anymore, but you can still make an argument he's in that 5 to 7 range for linebackers right now.
100%. And he's still a tackling machine as well, too.
Yeah. So give him an opportunity, and I do like, Terron Armstead. Yeah, I don't know how much longer he's going to be kicking around, but man, he is still a quality left tackle.
Absolutely as well, too. So we'll have a lot to look forward to in NFL free agency, but that wasn't the only NFL thing we had. There's the NFL Combine taking place, something we got to see one of the days up close and in personal as well, too, for the defensive linemen and linebackers as well, too. And honestly, I'm just going to summarize this quickly. What are they feeding those kids in Georgia, and can I get some of that? Because my goodness, it felt like every single Georgia player absolutely dominated.
Yeah, look, I felt like I reached with a couple of my picks in the mock draft. I don't feel that way anymore about any of the Georgia players. We didn't even see Nakobe Dean run, and based off of what we saw everybody else run, if that man doesn't run a 4.4, I will be disappointed.
Because I said run a 4.3, not like a high 4.3s. Based on the way Jordan Davis was running, I can see Nakobe Dean cracking like a 4.38.
It was funny. I went to a chiropractor after we got back, and I talked to the chiropractor about Jordan Davis, and he's like, physically speaking, there's no way that man should be able to move that agile and that quickly at his size. 6'7", 341 pounds listed is what he weighed in at. Runs a 4.78 is insane, and not necessarily. His 10-yard shuttle, insane. His agility drills, what are you feeling? Like, that's not fair, man. He hits a spin move on the straight line drills like it's just nothing to him. I felt embarrassed to ever have called myself one time an athlete at that point in time, watching this huge monolith of a man do what he did. Like, I feel like I can never consider myself an athlete anymore after watching that.
He was Dontari Poe's combine with the tape to back up all of it as well, too, on top of it as well, too. Like, he feels like Vita Vea 2.0 that's a little more physically gifted on top of that as well, too. Yeah. We all know how freakish Vita Vea is. So I think I think if his stock didn't go up, the teams should start looking at him as well too. Like those top 15 teams should be like, oh well, he's pretty good. It should be like, no, thank goodness he's here. We want him. Like if he starts to slip because he's the big defensive tackle, someone should jump on that. Chargers looking at you. If he's there for you, the Chargers, you get for Jordan Davis to sprint that card up there himself with how fast he runs now.
And you know what, Chargers, if he's not there, don't be scared to take Devontae Wyatt either. He is just equally as good of a defensive tackle. As we just learned, they ran the exact same 40 time, or maybe it was a .01 apart.
Close enough, yeah.
They equally are as good as each other at defensive tackle. And here's the embarrassment for Georgia. You're an embarrassment of wealth right there. And like defensive tackle, defensive end, defensive line, linebacker, edge rushers. Oh, we went on Saturday and it was just all Georgia players that we just watched light it up. We forgot there was a couple guys for Georgia in that performance in the cornerbacks, and we're like watching them sit here and run the top times for corners as well. Not the top time, but top times for a corner. And it's just like this is ridiculous. The embarrassment of wealth that came out of Kirby Smart's defense is insane. You gotta give him the credit for that. And I do want to reach out of Georgia for just a second though. Shout out Nick Benito, who in and of himself he had a fantastic day as well in the combine on Saturday. He looked very, very good all around, and that was surprising. Kayvon Thibodeau, not the most overwhelming performance, I don't think. I don't think he solidified himself as that number one edge. I think he's still 1A, 1B, whichever way you choose with Aiden Hutchinson. They both did a really good job. But actually, out of that edge rush class, I like the kid from Virginia Tech, Barno, that 440, I'm sorry. Nah. I'm not running away from that man ever. Like, I will lay on the ground like Steph Curry did when Giannis dunked on him. Like, that'll be me if I see that man across the line for me, because I'm not going to be able to block him. Like, 4'3" as a 280-pound man? Nah.
He's going to run around. Like, you got to find a way to engage him. Otherwise, if it's a foot race, it's over at that point. I also want to mention Trayvon Walker, going back to the Georgia, too, running a 4.5 as an edge on top as well, too, putting himself into that first-round mix as well. And this was kind of an interesting combine, because when I look back on it, I don't think really anybody hurt themselves. The closest might be Kenny Pickett with his baby hands, which like he did, but we'll see as well too. Maybe once they same throw at the pro day,
he's
they'll
still
get
a first rounder. Like
almost guaranteed. Maybe George Karlaftis just a little bit, because he didn't have the greatest of day, but he's still a first rounder as well too. He just might not be top 10. Maybe now he's top 17, something like that. He's still a fantastic prospect. Sauce Gardner ran a 4.5, which was pretty good considering he's a long-rangey physical corner. No one expected him to run a 4.4 or anything like that. Like, nobody really let themselves down, it felt like. Like, nobody really let down overall.
Yeah, I think Devin Lloyd might be the only one.
That's a good one. I retract that. I forgot about Devin Lloyd.
He might be the only one. And honestly, I don't think it was as bad as people are making it out to be.
It doesn't help that he ran it the same day as Jordan Davis, and they ran almost an identical 40. I think that's what kills him.
And he did it at 9 o'clock at night. Like, that's a rough time. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not used to playing a sport or starting a sport at 9 p.m. at night. That's not when I'm used to starting my 40. You know, that's rough on somebody. And you know, I don't know. You're built to start at 7. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Like, that's when you're built to start a game, is at 7 p.m. And you're not built to start 2 hours later. So I don't think it's bad. I think if it's the same at his pro day, there's a little bit of worry.
I think he's got to at least be above a 4.6 to help him out, like a 4.57, a 4.58, something like that. I think we'll get him kind of back into that teens range. But I think if he runs slower than a 4.6, that is going to hurt him. Considering he is known as an athletic, rangy coverage linebacker that it's like a big safety. I think that's what will kind of hurt him as well. Wherever he goes, I think he's going to be really fine on the field. I'm just thinking as far as where his draft stock goes as well too. And when we talked about the quarterbacks as well too. Malik Willis put on a little bit of a mini show. They're showing off the arm strength, the intangibles, all those things. I think he propelled himself into possibly with QB1 taken as well too with the performance he put on.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to drop to the Steelers anymore. You know what? First of all, there was the day before when he helped a homeless man out in Indianapolis with his own clothes, gave him his own clothes. That started it all. And then his performance on the field during the combine, and then the release of the much antiquated Wonderlic test, where he reportedly scored a 36, which is by far the highest we've had in recent years. So, yeah, let's just say Malik Willis, good job.
He might be moving himself into a really nice position there. Maybe the Lions consider taking him there as well too as a guy for the future. I mean, that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I don't think he's look. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a number 1 pick, but I've been surprised before. Let's just put it that way. There's more need there at 1, but you know what? It wouldn't be the worst thing I've ever seen.
Wouldn't be surprised, man, unless maybe Jacksonville decides to go goofy and take him number 1 overall. Like, you know what, Trevor Lawrence, this experience was fun, but we want Malik Willis now. I mean, we've seen Arizona do it with Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray. So maybe we see something real goofy, and it's Jacksonville, so you can't fully rule it out.
Well, I'm thinking they trade back, maybe get a maybe Philadelphia trades up to number 1 and takes Malik or something. Who knows?
That would make sense, but I mean, at the same time, we've seen a lot of things that don't make dollars and don't make sense necessarily as well too. And we have to talk about the receivers as well too. Chris Olave I know it wasn't official, running that 4.29, I think it was, or 4.26, absolutely terrorizing the track. Granted, they did him dirty, and Reed made it officially a 4.38, so he didn't get a chance to run against it. He was told as a 4.26. He was done with that. I think, in my humble opinion, we already both had him as receiver 1. I think that, for me, that was the stamp on it as well too. Whether it was the 4.39 or the 4.29, whatever you want to give him as well too. If he ran sub 4.4, he was stamped in number 1 for me, because speed was like the 4th or 5th thing on his attribute charts that stands out to, like his 4th or 5th best skill. And you make him one of the fastest in the draft on top of that. Cute. Receiver 1 should be a top 10 pick. Probably will slip because everyone's has their preferences, but I think he's receiver 1 locked and loaded.
Yeah, and he didn't drop a ball, by the way, during the day. So that's worth mentioning as well. Yeah, my one thing is he's speed wise. It was always like, well, he's not as fast as the other guy. I'm sorry, you run a 4.29, even if it's unofficial. I don't care. You know what? Yeah, unofficial to me is more realistic because that's what you're going to be giving me on the field. Like, it may have started late, maybe the clock started late, but that's fine because I'm going to be seeing him in a upright stance 1 step further than when he started his 40, which gives me more of a thought of a 4.29 for his running style. And if he's running a 4.29 and he's the slow top receiver, not right next to Drake London, yeah, number 1 receiver. My card is in. Thank you very much. You'll be lining up as my number 2 receiver on day 1.
And we talked a lot about how the Georgia guys lit it up too. How about the Baylor guys? You have the fastest DB who also had the 2nd fastest 40 of all time at the combine at 4.23, and a receiver who unofficially was at like a 4.21 at 4.22 as well, but then got officially at like a 4.28 or something like that. I think they did him a little bit dirty there as well too. But those Baylor corner and receiver as well too, but outside players lighting it up on the track as well too. So just wanted to point out some school dynamics there as well too. So my last question for you before we head into our final segment as well too. After the combine as well, how much would you change? How much would you change would you change your mock draft now after that? Would you see a whole lot of movement there, or do you think it'd probably stay a little bit the same as of right now?
Malik Willis is my big change. I think I flip him with Kenny Pickett. Other than that, I think I actually really like a lot of my list. Maybe Kenyon Green doesn't go as high. That would be it. That'd be the other one. But Trevor Penning still looked good. Ryman looked good. Outside of the kid from Boston College who I left off, who might be the guy that replaces Kenyon Green as the first guard go off in my eyes, just because he had a fantastic combine. So other than that, I think Malik Willis is probably my big mover just because of how good he was during the combine and how good everything else came out. It's not just a one-sided thing with him. So he's my big mover. But other than that, I like a lot of what else I saw.
Absolutely. The only one for me is I think I might slide Kenyon Green out as well too. Maybe some of the linemen I forced in there, and I might get Trayvon Walker just to find his way in there, kind of like how Adafe Owe did last year as well too. So I think there'd be just a little bit of movement like that. I still feel pretty decent about keeping Devin Lloyd out, just because I think he's going to slip and be that early 2nd round pick where whoever gets him is literally going shaking their hands, kind of like what you saw with Jeremiah Wusu-Kormo last year, Darius Leonard, and a couple of years ago. Just a guy that's 1st round caliber, but just for whatever reason slips. So you end up with 2 1st round picks, basically, is how it ends up working out as well, too. So definitely feel good about him. So that's going to take us to Kelcey's favorite part of every live cast as well, too. That is Crunch Time. And Crunch Time, of course, brought to you by Swift Lifestyles, the premier gamer feel out there. It's like pre-workout, both out all the itches and jitters. And Kelcey, this is your favorite segment, so I'm going to let you take it away. So you got something fun.
Yeah, so we got a giveaway going on through Belly Up right now, and I'm going to pop it right here on the screen. You can see it right here. We talked about Javonte Williams a little bit ago. We were giving away a Javonte Williams jersey. And in order to get entered for this, guys, you got to head on over to Twitter. Or it is also on Instagram, by the way. But here's what you got to do. You got to be following Belly Up Sports on Twitter or Instagram if you're on Instagram. You have to retweet it or share it to your story. And then you must be registered on @Pristine Auctions website, www.pristineauction.com/register. Registration code BELLY at sign up for $10 off first purchase, if that's if you guys purchase anything. But just get signed up for it. And that way, you'll be able to get a chance to get your signed Javonte Williams jersey.
Not even a Broncos fan, but I may or may not be signed up as well, too. So definitely you might want to get out there.
I mean, look, I have 2 jerseys. I might as well add a big signed jersey right in that blank space behind my head.
You might as well as right now. Just keep the running back train going behind you as well, too. But that will do it for us. For DJ, as always, joined by Kelcey for the High Low Sports Podcast. We will see you guys next time.